NASCAR, of course, has three manufacturers that compete regularly on the NASCAR Cup Series: Chevrolet, Toyota, and Ford. In the results this year and in victory lane, only two of those makes have shown up. That has been Toyota and Chevrolet. Ford has been shut out across the board. And I want to break that down and see if there's anybody. We got very close to seeing a Ford win at Kansas, but at the end of it, Chris Buescher gets edged out by Kyle Larson. Brad Gilly, right now, out of every team that is out there, taking a look at Stewart-Haas Racing, Front Row Motorsports, Penske, all the folks that run Fords, including Roush Fenway Keselowski, is there any Ford driver right now that you think represents a serious threat to win the title?
Oh, man. Right now, no. But we still, we're only a third of the way into the season total. But no, I don't see anyone that's a threat to win the title. I mean, you got to go back and look at probably, to me, what is one of the most important factors in all of this. And it's not necessarily top 10, top 5 finishes. Outside of wins, it's laps led. And they are very deficient in that category right now. And you're going to have to go out there and lead laps consistently if you want to go out there and contend for the title.
Yeah, usually leading laps helps you win races. Alexis, same question. Is anybody in this camp ready to step up and challenge the Chevys and the Toyotas?
I wish I could say yes in a definitive way for any of them. I mean, look, somebody shared on X last night after the race that all of these close finishes that we have had a Ford involved in second place, so close to getting to victory lane and just not making it happen. Obviously, Chris Buescher was the latest in the line of Fords to be just, a nose away from victory. So it's going to happen, and it's most likely going to happen soon. But to say that any of those drivers right now are favorites or even close to favorites to run for a championship or make the Final Four, I can't. There's just no line that I can draw to any one of them in a favorable way right now when you have the behemoths of Joe Gibbs Racing and Hendrick Motorsports standing in their way.
And maybe, we talked about this before we went on the air, Brad Gilly mentioned it, maybe the best Ford driver at the moment might be Noah Gragson. And he's
consistent, maybe the most consistent.
He's knocking down some top tens right now. But Brad, let me throw this into the mix because you talked about Joey Logano a moment ago, saying he's 4 points out of the playoffs right now, and that's really early. But that's not where he wants to be. He does not have a win. But you look back at the last 2 years, and Blaney won by getting hot in the playoffs. He got in and he won a couple of races, and next thing you know, he's the champion. Joey Logano pretty much did the same thing. So, Brad, is that fool's gold, or is that real hope that maybe a Ford driver or two could get hot toward the end?
Well, look, the way a NASCAR season goes, we usually talk about what happens up until the Coca-Cola 600, and that's one mini season. And once we start the Coca-Cola 600, we start the second half of the regular season. The summer months usually change things up quite a bit. Now, if you have a Denny Hamlin, a Kyle Larson, a William Byron out there winning races, typically those drivers stay consistent, but we start to see a little more movement throughout the field. And then obviously come playoffs time, that is a big, big deal. 2 years ago, Joey Logano stepped up. Last year, Logano and Blaney went into the playoffs only +8 above the cut line, and I didn't think Blaney was actually going to make it out of the first round. Turns out Logano didn't make it out of the first round, and the pendulum swung in Blaney's direction when it counted. There's a lot of racing to go, and a lot of things can happen between now and then, but my gosh, right now, it's one thing to sit there and say, well, Logano's knocking down some top 5 finishes, but he's just not there. He was having struggles getting in the top 20 yesterday and really running there. And I think that's a really tough thing to see, that it's not even that you're running okay. You're running mediocre right now, and they've got to find something.
It's funny because sitting there listening to Brad, I was thinking to myself, he's so right. There's so many things that can happen that we cannot foresee. Like, us in the media, we like to think that we can predict or we know what might happen next. We talk about it. We make a living out of it, but we really don't. I mean, when he talks about, thinking Blaney wasn't going to make it out of the first round and he ends up the champion, I mean, we all have things like that we can trace back. Well, we thought this was going to happen and it didn't. So if you're a Ford fan out there and you're seeing all this happen and you're thinking, oh man, it's going to be a dismal year, things can change, on a dime as early as next week, and we could see Ford go on, a winning streak that we hadn't seen in the first 12 races. Do I think that's going to happen? Not really, but it certainly could. So that's what makes it fun, right?
I think so. I mean, I'm not going to go out and say they're going to get shut out for the year.
I don't
cannot
think so.
see that
No
happening.
way.
I
No
think
way.
circumstances will play. You might have a high attrition race somewhere.
Yep.
Could be at Darlington this weekend because you go down there, a lot of folks start that race that aren't around at the end of 400 miles. So that could be an opportunity for a Ford to win. But Brad, they picked a heck of a year to call their Mustang the Dark Horse.
No,
No
what a cool name for a race car, and it's just not delivering what's it. Well, they've made themselves a dark horse,
Yeah.
to be honest with you.
Yeah. Maybe it
because
is delivering too much.
Yeah. I mean, it's literally living up to its name. But
Yeah.
last year, here's another key thing to point out. Last year, Joey Logano won at Atlanta Motor Speedway. We now consider that a speedway race that has the same randomness as Daytona and Talladega. Their next win didn't come until Ryan Blaney won the Coca-Cola 600. And we talked about how soft they were last year as well, but they did have a win, so that changed the narrative up just a little bit. Now do we have to wait till the Coca-Cola 600 for one of them to go to victory lane? Is it going to happen at Gateway after that? Or, are we going to go to Sonoma Raceway? I mean, who knows when it's going to happen?
I can see a scenario that says that maybe only one Ford team gets a win this year.
Potentially.
Maybe Penske, maybe RFK.
You mean organization?
Yes, organization.
Yeah.
Maybe Penske because it's Penske.
Sure.
And they have always done things right. Maybe RFK, Chris Buescher came within literally an eyelash of winning. I don't see Front Row Motorsports winning unless it's
Super Speedway.
Super Speedway. But that we can say that about
I know.
everybody
There are a lot
in
of
the
people
field,
that are
Brad.
good there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can say that pretty much about every other car. Well, they could win at Daytona or Talladega, or maybe Atlanta. You throw that in there. But outside of that, I don't see Front Row winning a race. I don't see Stewart-Haas winning a race. And we just talked about Noah Gragson being improved and trending up. But there's the gap between improved and trending up guys is mammoth.
And being a threat to win.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I mean, I think if I had to choose an organization, I would probably choose Penske, and then my second would be RFK. I mean, look at how close RFK has been. Brad Keselowski has finished runner-up a handful of times this season. We saw, Chris Buescher comes so close at Kansas. So between those two organizations, if I had to pick one to be the first to get Ford in victory lane, it would come from one of those two for sure.
Brad, can one of these other Ford teams, an outlier, give them a win, or does it have to come from probably Penske?
Yeah, I would say Penske or RFK, and truthfully, I feel a little more likely that it would be Penske. But gosh, there are a lot of things I still worry about. When Ryan Blaney won his way into the championship round last year, all of a sudden he became the favorite because the Fords had been really good on short tracks. Well, we've had a good handful of short track looks already between Martinsville, Bristol, and Richmond Raceway, and they hadn't even stepped up there. But to Alexis' point earlier, it just seems like Penske, they've got a lot behind them, and they have a long, long history of consistently winning year over year. So if I had to pick one, it would be them.